Miami's fourth straight win didn't land softly. It hit with the weight of a team that's been waiting weeks to unleash something this physical. The run game didn't just appear. It tore the field open in wide streaks of green, leaving the Jets tripping over shadows and guesses. 239 rushing yards, 41 attempts, a rhythm that felt more like a heartbeat than a play call. Yet somehow, the stat line that should have stolen the entire afternoon belonged to a player who touched the ball only a handful of times. 7 carries, 92 yards, a touchdown that felt like a flare fired into the sky. And then he was gone. Devon Achane's bursts are usually followed by cheers, replays, arguments, disbelief. This time, the surge up the sideline came with a different sound, a hit that pulled the stadium's energy down several degrees. He stood, then slowed, then bent, then vanished into the blue tent while the crowd held its breath, as if waiting for someone to tell them the moment didn't mean what it looked like. From the tent to the locker room, and eventually to the sideline again, where he watched the second half, like someone trapped between adrenaline and uncertainty. The Dolphins kept scoring, kept running, kept draining the Jets until the 34-10 score looked almost gentle compared to the imbalance on the field. But there was an absence lingering behind the dominance. Sometimes a win feels heavy before it feels satisfying. Achane's season has been stitched together by big plays that appear out of nowhere, and just as suddenly, he found himself pulled out of a script. A rib injury, the kind that leaves everyone guessing because nothing about ribs ever seems straightforward. You can breathe fine one moment, then wince the next. You can jog without pain, and then twist the wrong direction and feel something spark. So, of course, when Mike McDaniel walked into his post-game update, the room waited for the kind of tone that signals trouble. Instead, he spoke with that calm confidence that always seems to hover just at the edge of mischief, as if he knows a little more than he's saying and enjoys leaving it suspended in the air. We got him looked at. He was hurting, he said, not sugarcoating anything, not trying to pretend the hit didn't matter, but he was available to come back in an emergency. That single phrase, available to come back, shifted everything. Suddenly the hit wasn't a nightmare. Suddenly the scenario fans had created in their heads, imagining broken ribs, weeks of absence, grim injury reports, all of that began dissolving. According to McDaniel, there were no signs of fractures, no immediate alarms, only soreness, treatment, monitoring, and more importantly, a choice, his choice, not to send Achane back into a game Miami already controlled. You could almost picture the internal dialogue, when streak alive, Jets collapsing, Dolphins running wild, Achane aching, and McDaniel deciding he simply didn't need to push the situation. Why gamble when the scoreboard and the momentum were already overwhelmingly in your favor? Why risk turning a bruise into something worse when the bigger battles sit ahead on the calendar? But then the next question landed with the same intensity as that hit up the sideline. What does this mean for the next game? Pittsburgh under the lights on Monday night. A matchup that always carries a certain emotional temperature, even when the teams aren't built from the same era. Achane on the field makes Miami's offense feel like it's operating in fast forward compared to everyone else. Without him, the speed shifts, not necessarily lower, but different, less abrupt, less destabilizing for defenses. So when McDaniel was asked whether Achane's outlook for the week ahead was positive, he gave an answer that hovered between hope and challenge. One would hope, he said, placing the responsibility on trainers, schedules, pain thresholds, and everything in between. You could hear the meaning behind the words. He wants Achane available, but he won't drag him across the line to make it happen. He'll push him, sure, but only until that invisible line where pushing becomes forcing. The extra day of rest suddenly feels like a storyline of its own. Monday night instead of Sunday afternoon. Such a small difference on the calendar. But for a rib injury, it can be the dividing line between cautious optimism and unnecessary struggle. Achane thrives on explosiveness, on changing direction with a violence that doesn't look violent, on accelerating before defenders even realize he's shifted gears. All of that requires the body to feel aligned. And ribs? They don't ask permission before reminding you they're there. Meanwhile, Miami is already juggling the emotional weight of Tyreek Hill's injury. Not having the most terrifying receiver in the league on the field alters the physics of the offense. And without Hill drawing the gravitational pull of entire defensive schemes, the pressure on the run game intensifies. The Dolphins haven't leaned as heavily on their running backs as pass-catching weapons in the last 2 weeks, a quiet decline that suddenly looks very loud when placed next to Hill's situation. Remove a chain from that equation, and things could get sticky faster than expected. But that's why McDaniel's reassurance that a chain could have returned if absolutely necessary hits with unexpected relief. If this had been a playoff game, a division decider, a must-win scenario drenched in consequences, perhaps we would have seen a chain jog back out onto the field, ribs wrapped, posture steady, trying to pretend nothing hurt. That alone suggests the injury is not the kind that lingers with dark clouds, not the kind that changes the tone of a season. Still, one question keeps spinning through the minds of fans. Was this a warning? A reminder that even a breakout season can be tilted by something as simple as an awkward fall. Every week, every play, every collision holds that possibility. The Dolphins have been soaring, stacking wins with confidence, controlling games with an ease that feels earned but still fragile. And in that fragile space lies the tension that keeps fans awake at night. How much can this team handle before the balance shifts? The running back room is deep enough to survive a short absence, but depth doesn't replicate uniqueness. A chain is different, and everyone knows it. The other runners can carry the load, push the pile, chew the clock, but they cannot recreate the way defenders panic when a chain bends a run toward daylight. They cannot replace the anxiety he injects into a defense even before the ball touches his hands. You can substitute talent, but you cannot substitute fear, not the specific kind of player like a chain induces. Yet Sunday served as evidence that Miami's offensive structure is capable of surviving turbulence. 239 rushing yards don't appear out of thin air. They come from commitment, timing, trust, blocking that feels almost synchronized, and a mindset that doesn't flinch when circumstances change. A chain's absence didn't break anything, at least not visibly. The Dolphins kept moving, kept leaning forward, kept piling on yards as if the system had already accounted for the scenario long before it occurred. Still, there's a lingering curiosity. What would the second half have looked like if a chain had returned? Would he have ripped off another long run, something that forces the Jets to rethink their entire defensive approach? Would McDaniel have given him a chance to hit the century mark on a day when he barely touched the ball? Or would his body have betrayed him the moment he twisted away from a tackle? We'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. Recovery doesn't thrive under hypothetical pressure. What matters now is the slow, measured process of the next few days. Treatments, evaluations, movements performed cautiously, the strange anxiety of waiting to see how pain responds to rest. The team will downplay the drama, but fans won't. Fans create their own narratives, fueled by hope and fear in equal measure. Is a chain healing quickly? Will he practice? Will he be limited? Will Monday night arrive with him fully suited, ready to explode again? There's another layer beneath all of this, the knowledge that the Dolphins are entering the part of the season where every game begins to feel heavier than the last. Momentum matters more now. Health matters more now. Confidence grows sharper now. And a chain, even with limited touches, has become central to Miami's identity. He doesn't need 20 carries to shape a game. Sometimes he only needs one. McDaniel's tone suggests he knows exactly what a chain means to this offense. Not just the yards, not just the highlights, but the pressure he places on opponents before the ball even snaps. That kind of presence creates space for everything else, for motions, for misdirection, for subtle adjustments that only work because defenders fear what might happen if they take a wrong step against the chain's speed. Without him, the offense still functions, but with him, it bends reality. And that's why Sunday felt like more than a comfortable win. It felt like a test disguised as domination. The Dolphins proved they can run through a division rival without leaning heavily on their most electric weapon. They proved McDaniel isn't afraid to protect a player even when the competitive fire might suggest otherwise. They proved the system can hum even when the spark plug momentarily goes dark. Yet through all of that, fans keep circling back to the same thought. Will the chain be ready? Not just physically ready, emotionally ready, rhythm ready, fully aligned with the tempo of this offense as it barrels toward the final stretch of the season. The anticipation rises, not just for his return, but for what his return could ignite. Hope feels justified. Concern feels reasonable. And somewhere between those two emotions sits the truth. Miami avoided the worst-case scenario. A chain wasn't broken. He wasn't ruled out. He wasn't sent for immediate imaging that ends with long timelines and grim silence. Instead, he stood on the sideline, watching, waiting, breathing through discomfort but fully present. If that's not a sign to stay optimistic, what is?